Hello everyone, welcome to another Narc Survivor live video. And this is a very important video for you to watch. Definitely something you should be watching before you argue with a narcissist. Because I can tell you that arguing with a narcissist is a waste of time. It really is, because first you've got to think about, why are you arguing with them? What is the purpose of it? What is the result that you want? And once you identify that, you then need to understand something about the narcissist, which is they do not care what you want. Yes, they may act as though they do, and they may give you lies and future faking, but that's really just to keep you around. They will make false promises about the future so that they can keep getting what they want from you in the present. They're not concerned about the outcome or result that you want, and that's why it's a waste of time arguing with them. They will argue with you because they want something from you, but it doesn't work that way the other way around. They're not concerned about you. It doesn't matter if you're in a relationship with them or a marriage. None of that matters to the narcissist. They're self-absorbed and they lack empathy. They have an inability to share and understand your feelings and experience. They're self-absorbed. It's just all about them. It's all about them just turning you into the supply that they need you to be. And even when you're arguing with them, that is also a means for them to get supply. Some people, they stay in these relationships for years, decades, even their entire lives, and they never get the result that they want. The narcissist never behaves anything like how the victim may want them to. While the victim has to turn their personality inside out in an effort to please them. Because that's really what the narcissist wants. They want to steal your sense of self. They want to destroy your authenticity because they can't be authentic. They use a false self. So they want to impose a false self on you as well. They don't care about your feelings, wants, or needs. They don't care about your goals, dreams, or ambitions. All they care about is whatever they want in that moment, and their feelings change from one moment to the next. And that's why it's really a waste of time arguing with them. You're much better off investing that time and energy into yourself. Because if you invest it into yourself, you can actually make things happen. But you can't make anything happen with them. They're of such a low level of consciousness, they're barely even awake or aware. So trying to get them to see sense, trying to reach a resolution, it's a waste of time. Narcissists do not want a resolution. They actually enjoy arguments and fights. They hate it when everything is peaceful and in harmony. They're not comfortable in that type of environment. They prefer chaos and drama. They thrive in dysfunctional environments. And that's how you may notice that if you told them that you don't like something that they do, such as if you said you don't like it when they slam doors in the house, then they'll start doing it even more. And if you confront them on it again, then they will gaslight you. They will just tell you you're overreactive, you're paranoid, or they will say that they didn't slam the door. They will say it wasn't as loud as it was before. Just like that movie from the 1940s, Gaslight, where that woman's husband, he is playing with those old lights that run on gas. He's playing with the gas lights in the house and or making her believe that he's not doing anything. And then she ends up losing her mind. This is what narcissists do. And they're going to keep doing that because it's a means for them to gain control. And especially with the covert narcissists. What it really depends on is what is going to give them the most amount of supply. And this is why there is usually quite a big difference between the covert and the overt narcissist. It's like if you confront an overt narcissist and you say you want them to improve on something, then they'll usually go above and beyond to show you that they are so much greater than what you think they are. They will really want to prove it to you. Because the overt narcissist, they're very overconfident. And for the overt narcissist, a lot of times their image does tend to be determined by what people see, by what they're showing openly. But then for the covert narcissist, it's more just making you believe something. So that's what the covert narcissist tends to do. And that's why if you argue with them about something, they're just going to spin you around in circles. You'll be stuck in these circular arguments. They just don't go anywhere. Because the covert narcissist doesn't really have any other option. If they were to try and change to be better, then they would be getting less supply or no supply at all. Because while they may act confident, they're actually very incompetent. As opposed to a narcissist who's more overt, many of them can actually be quite competent. And we do see this a lot with overt narcissists in business. I've seen a statistic that says that I think it's 1 in 25 CEOs are psychopaths. So overt narcissists, if you argue with them about something, if you say that something isn't good enough, they might just go all out to show you that it is. They will want to prove a point to you. But the covert narcissist operates very differently. But the covert narcissist, you will see a lot more denial, blame shifting, projection, gaslighting. Because the covert narcissist is very vulnerable. It's hidden. The covert narcissist wears a mask. I mean, the overt narcissist wears a mask as well. But the covert narcissist, they really hide everything. So this is why it's really a waste of time arguing with them. You're not going to achieve anything by doing that. All the narcissist is concerned about is getting supply. As long as they can get that supply from you, they're not really bothered. And their supply comes from getting you to react. If you are reacting to a narcissist, then you're giving them supply. This is why it's very important to use the grey rock. Observe, don't absorb. Respond, don't react. But also be aware that when you do that, they may ramp up the abuse to try and get a reaction out of you, because they cannot function without your reactions. They need your reactions so that they know how you feel. And as long as you don't feel too good, then it creates a sense of elevation in themselves. It makes them feel powerful and confident. And typically when you're arguing with narcissists, it's like whatever the last argument was like, the next argument will usually be a lot worse. I've noticed this in my own experience. They're like addicts, junkies. They may have got a certain level of high from the previous argument, but now the next time around they have to do more to get that same hit, that same rush. It's like over time the abuse becomes normalized. They become desensitized to it. And this is a big problem for narcissists because they're spoiled, they're enabled, and the overconsumption. It's like when they love bomb you, they want all of your time, all of your attention. They want all of your focus to be on them. They want you to give them everything you've got right from the beginning. While they're love bombing you in until the point where they become completely desensitized to it. And you'll know when that happens because once your supply has lost its potency, then they begin to devalue you. That's when the arguments begin. But it's the same thing with the arguments as well. They abuse you, they devalue you, they put you down. But then it has to get worse over time. The abuse has to escalate for them to have that same hit that they had before. And this is when they can often become violent. And then even when they've become violent, they may have hurt you, but then that's no longer satisfying for them. They've become desensitized to that as well. So then they have to go back to the love bombing. And that's why you often see them switch back and forth from the love bombing to the devalue, and then back to the love bombing again. And then sometimes they just completely discard you. And then a few days later, they hoover you back in. This is why there's this endless cycle of abuse. Because they're desensitized, they become sensitive to things very easily and quickly. This is a big problem with narcissists because of their lack of empathy. And of course also because they're spoiled, they're enabled, they're arrogant and entitled. But then also there is a big problem with this in society today. Like if we look on social media, Facebook or Instagram, people can post something up on there and get 1,000 likes, hundreds of comments. And over time, they just become desensitized to it. It no longer satisfies them as much as it did before. And it's the same thing with dating apps. A narcissist could go on a dating app and have hundreds of matches or hundreds of messages, and over time they just become desensitized to it. It just becomes numbers rather than actual individual people who have a heart, a soul, a personality of their own. And all of these things, it just teaches people to objectify people. It really does. I mean, like if you look on social media with the posts, and some posts might just have 100,000 likes, and it's just a number. But then if you go onto the list of those 100,000 likes, they're actual real people who have created an account on there. But this is especially how narcissists see it. When they go into social media and they're looking at how many likes or comments they've got, they're just looking at the numbers. They're not really thinking about the actual people. They're not connecting with them. They likely don't even know who any of those people are. And yet, it's still giving them supply. So just let that sink in. They're getting supply from social media, from getting thousands of likes, and they don't even know who they're getting those likes from. That doesn't even concern them. Just as an example, it could be a 20-year-old Instagram model who has tons of likes, but maybe half of those likes are from 50 or 60-year-old men who are fat and bald and not even her type. And yet she's still getting supply from that. And by knowing that, it reveals that who the person actually is doesn't always matter. Sometimes it does. But with social media, especially, it seems like it doesn't really matter at all. It doesn't even cross their minds who the people actually are. That's not even a concern to them. They're more concerned with the numbers after a certain point. Once they're getting so much reach, so much attention, so much recognition, the actual people begin to matter less and less, to the point where it just doesn't even seem to matter anymore. But it's always been like that with narcissists anyway, because that's what they do. They objectify people, and they objectify themselves as well. That's why you just can't get through to them, because they're just viewing you as an object. And in their minds, you are an object that exists to serve them, to be who they need you to be. They're not thinking of you as a separate person with your own feelings, wants and needs. They're not even concerned about that. It's just all about them. It's all just about their validation and them feeling better about themselves, often at your expense. But yeah, a lot of these problems, it definitely comes from their desensitization. Initially, when they love bomb you, they're seeking positive validation from you. It's like they're wanting to be involved with you every day, and it's like they want to learn more about you. You're going on dates, you're being intimate with each other, you're doing all of these things. But then it's like, why does that suddenly stop? Because that's what the problem is. I mean, that's why there's billions of views on Narcissist on YouTube. It's clearly because the love bombing stops. If the love bombing kept going, then there would be no problem. The problem is it stops, and people don't understand why. And the reason why it stops is because the narcissist becomes desensitized. So that effect that you were having on them initially is no longer having that same effect on them anymore. And typically what happens is the love bombing gets shorter and shorter with each person they meet, until eventually, as some of you may have experienced, sometimes there is no love bombing at all. And they just go straight into the devaluation, if they can. And I think that's typically with a collapsed narcissist. Someone who doesn't really have any means, they don't have anything to lure you in with. There's no way for them to get your positive validation. So instead, what they do is they just devalue you. Because what else can they do? So that's where we see that. But the narcissist who's more confident, outgoing, the narcissist who has something to give, they have something to offer, they have something to reel you in with. Of course, that type of narcissist, yes, they're going to love bomb you. And it is going to be a very powerful love bombing. And it will typically result in a trauma bond. Because of course, you want to get back to that. You want to get back to that false character that you saw at the beginning. And that's how the arguments start. When the narcissist just goes straight to the devaluation and there's no love bombing, then you just want to leave because you haven't seen anything good about them. There was nothing positive that lured you in, so there's no reason for you to stay. But yeah, that's why these arguments will get worse over time. Because they become desensitized to it, but then at the same time, these arguments are a source of enjoyment for the narcissist. Yes, they enjoy it. That's how you may have noticed that when you're arguing with them, it lasts for such a long time. And they prolong it. They make it last longer than necessary for a reason, because they're enjoying it. If they weren't enjoying it, then they would want the argument to stop. Then they would probably leave the room, or they would tell you to go. They don't do that because it is a source of amusement for the narcissist. They enjoy the battle. They enjoy trying to gain the upper hand and feeling powerful. Because they're always going to feel powerful in an argument. You can't argue with them. You're arguing with logic. They're using emotions, and they're manipulating your emotions as well. And that's why it's a waste of time in engaging in these senseless arguments that go nowhere. Because it's never going to result in anything positive. It's never going to result in anything that's beneficial for you. In fact, the only way that you can really get a positive result from an argument with a narcissist, it's really if it, before it evolves into an argument, you just have to make it seem as though it's going to be something beneficial for them. Because once you've already been involved with them, once you become their source of supply, they're not going to want to do anything that's beneficial for you. Anything that's going to make you happy. Because if it makes you happy, it's going to make them sad. And that's why once from the devaluation phase onwards, they typically do the opposite of whatever they think you want. And that may make you wonder, how can they do the opposite of what you want when initially, when they were love bombing you, they wanted what you wanted? But actually, no, that's the thing. They never wanted what you wanted. That's just the love bombing, the manipulation. They were just mirroring back to you whatever they thought you wanted to see. What you see during the devaluation, that's what they want. And what they want can change depending on how you feel or what you want. Because what they really want is power and control over you. Once they become desensitized to your source of supply, and once they begin to feel inadequate, because of course, once they become desensitized to it, they're no longer getting that fuel. So no matter what you do for them, no matter how many compliments you give to them, no matter how much you try to prop them up, it's never going to be enough. It's not going to validate the false self, and then they feel inadequate. So the only way they can get supply from that point on is by devaluing you, by putting you down. So that's why they do that. And knowing this, I mean, I've said it before, but you should know the best part of a relationship with a narcissist really is always going to be at the beginning. It's going to be in the love bombing phase. Because that's when you get the false character. That's when they mirror you. But I will say, good luck leaving the narcissist after that. After you've had this picture perfect character, this soulmate who mirrors back to you everything you think that you wanted. Or everything they think you wanted, at least, I should say. I mean, of course, that does create a soul tie. It does typically result in a trauma bond. Because then you're fighting for the rest of the relationship, trying to get back to that. Until eventually, hopefully, you wake up and you realize that that person never existed. If that false character existed, if it was real, then where is it now? Why do you now see this monster, this person who is constantly attacking you? I mean, that doesn't make any sense if you want the same things. And that's how you should know that it was all fake. It was a mirage. They do not want what you want. They are not about what you're about. What they're about is anything that validates the false self. And once your supply has gone stale, it's lost its potency. They become desensitized to it because it's become normalized. They've been around it for too long. Once that happens, then they begin to feel inadequate, and then they turn against you. They devalue you, because that's the only other way that they can get supply. Until the point where they can't devalue you anymore, and then they have to get supply from other people, from playing the victim to garner sympathy and attention. So you can see that all they're really concerned about is that supply. And that's why it's a waste of time arguing with a narcissist. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to result in anything good for you. Of course, at the beginning, in the love bombing phase, you don't even have to argue with them about anything. Even if you do something wrong, they will just overlook it. They will act like it didn't happen. Or they will just laugh it off. But then once you get to the devaluation phase, you can't do anything right. In the love bombing phase, you can't do anything wrong. In the devaluation phase, you can't do anything right. So yeah, arguing with a narcissist, it never results in a resolution. Because from that point on, they're seeking power and control over you. And of course, they're not going to have any power at all if they just give in to you. Then they're going to be feeling like you have the power. So it's really a power trip from that point on, from the devaluation phase onwards. Because from that point on, they feel inadequate. And they feel inadequate because they're desensitized to you. Because at one point they were idealizing you. They were getting the supply. And now it's no longer having that same effect on them. And it leaves them feeling like something's wrong with them because it's no longer validating their false self. So now they feel inadequate. That's why they turn against you. That's why they have to have power over you to manage their own feelings of inadequacy. And this is why you can never win an argument with a narcissist, especially if you're trying to bring logic to it. They're just going to be using their emotions to manipulate you. And of course, they will be very emotional because they're not getting supply. And especially if you have seen the mask slip, then naturally you're no longer validating them as well after that. So yeah, it's really a waste of time arguing with a narcissist. They don't want to understand. I would say that many of them can't even understand you if they tried. They just have no interest in other people. They don't care about how things are for you. They don't care about what you're going through. All they care about is their supply. The supply that you and the supply that they get in from this image that they're putting out to other people. That's all they really care about. Anything else, they are not concerned about it at all. Because just by being around you, because you've seen their mask slip, you're not validating the false self. And once they've learned you, your supply loses its potency. So it no longer props them up, it no longer validates their false self. So then they can only get supply from devaluing you. And there's no logical argument that you can have with them, because they're on a totally different frequency. They're coming at it with emotions from their own feelings of inadequacy, their own shame. And there's just no reasoning with that, because then they're also in denial of it, and they're making it out like you're the problem. And that's why there's no getting through to them. That's why it's a waste of time arguing with a narcissist. It's never going to make sense to them. The only thing that's going to make sense to them is you doing more and being more for them, because of their arrogance and entitlement. And they will just expect you to pull your personality inside out in an effort to please them. But no matter what you do, it will never be enough. They will never be satisfied. It may seem like it's enough at first, but they will become desensitized to it. And that's why they will then begin abusing you again. They just can't experience a deeper, more intense feeling like we can. They've got to have all of these things. They've got to have everything the way they want it to be. They've got to have you the way they want you to be. And even then, they're still not happy. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what you say. And it's not just you. No one is ever going to be good enough for a narcissist. It's never going to happen. And why? It's not because people aren't good enough. It's because the narcissist isn't good enough for themselves. You think you hate the narcissist? They hate themselves more than you do. They really do. And that's why they abandoned their true self a long time ago and created a false self. Because they hate themselves more than you ever could. That's why they manipulate you. That's why they end up devaluing you, taking value away from you. Not so much because they hate you, but because they hate themselves. And they view you as an extension of them. So they're just hating on themselves through you. They can only give you what they've got to give, and what they've got to give is their own self-hatred. Of course, you won't get all of that hate from a person who loves themselves. But then it may make you wonder as well, if the narcissist hates you so much, then why do they keep coming back? Why do they keep hoovering you? And of course, the reason why is because they're still trying to mold you back into the supply that they need you to be, to validate the false self. And they keep coming back because at one point, you were that supply for the narcissist. You did validate them. You did make them feel good about themselves. But then the problem is, once you began to wake up and their mask began to slip, then you stopped validating them. So then they look at it as though they just need to rearrange the parameters of the situation. They need to coordinate it in a different way. And then maybe then they can get the type of response that they want from you, so that it validates the false self, and then it makes them feel sufficient. So that's what it's all about. That's why they treat you the way that they do, and that's why it's a waste of time arguing with a narcissist, because they can't get past their own feelings of self-hatred. And that's really what you're arguing with. It's like this inner dialogue, this inner critic. It's constantly reminding them of such a bad person they are, all of the things that they've done to people. It's bringing up the shame. But then also, it's kind of like the angel and the devil on the shoulder. So they have that one voice, that bad voice, and then the good voice that's trying to fight for them. But then they have to put that onto you. They have to make you feel like it's you, because that's the only way that they can quiet the bad voice, the voice that's telling them that something is wrong with them. So that's where that comes from. And that's why it just seems like, for no reason at all, while you may have sacrificed your life for them, and then they still turn against you, they still devalue you, that's because of their shame. It's because they know they're not good enough for you. They know they don't deserve you. They know that you've done far more for them than what they deserve. They're aware of that at some level. Of course, they're in denial as well, because they're fighting that negative voice in their heads. And this is why some things just come out of nowhere, like for no reason at all. You just don't understand, why is this happening? Why are they behaving in this way? And it's because of that inner critic. And you don't hear that voice, but that's what's going on in their minds. Of course, it's a thought. It begins with a thought that leads to feelings, negative emotions, which then leads to negative behaviors, where they're then lashing out at you. It always begins with a thought. And narcissists are very anxious. They're always having these negative thoughts. Unless, of course, if they're in the fantasy and they're love bombing you. Then if they're love bombing you and you're validating them, then it tends to quieten that voice. So that's how you see them go back and forth between the love bombing and the devaluation. It's all based on whether or not you're validating them. Of course, it does get to a certain point in the relationship where no matter what you do, no matter how much you try to validate them, they know it isn't real. But earlier on in the relationship, even when they're devaluing you, if you just switch it up and you start validating them, you start saying, okay, fine, this is who I am. I am responsible for what you're blaming me for. And yes, you are perfect. You are a wonderful person. You are too good for me. If you just switch it up and you say that, then they will change their demeanor towards you. And why? Because that's all they really want. They want to paint you as the villain, and they want you to accept it, while also validating them and seeing them as perfect. You do that and then it all goes away. Then they stop provoking you because they haven't got a reason to. Unless, of course, that inner critic comes up again. And then they have to take it out on you even more. So that's all that it really is. They're just constantly trying to silence that inner critic in their minds. That's telling them that they're a bad person as a result of the shame, their actions, all of the things that they've done to people, all of the things that they've done to you. And of course, this can be very difficult for people to understand, because if you try and listen to the voice inside your own head, I mean, for myself, I used to have a negative voice in my head. I used to have my parents' voice that was constantly criticizing me. But then at some point in my life, I became more awake and aware. And then that voice just went away. But it's kind of like I have control of it, and I can bring that voice back if I want to. But from my research, many people do have this inner critic, this inner dialogue, this negative, self-criticizing voice. But for you, it may be different. You may be in control of it. You may be able to recognize that it's a voice in your head, and it does not describe someone else. And so it's not something that you put on to someone else. But the narcissist is unconscious, they're unaware. So that's why they do that. That's why they put it onto you. But it's quite difficult to get into that topic because, I mean, just thinking about it, I don't know what's going on in other people's minds. I don't know if the viewers who are watching now, if you have an inner critic, or if you do, I don't know how much control you have over it. So it gets kind of confusing then. But as for the narcissist, they must have that inner dialogue, because that's what's running the show. That's what's causing them to do the things that they do. It's what's causing them to behave negatively towards you. So I hope that helps you to understand. And by knowing that, you should understand why it's really a waste of time arguing with a narcissist. There's really no point at all, because you're arguing with their emotions. There's no logic, there's no reason. It's not a rational argument. You're arguing with someone who has an arrested emotional development, and you're trying to get them to see sense. And that's all you're really trying to do. When you're arguing with a narcissist, you're trying to get them to see sense. You're trying to get them to see reality. And that's just something that's not going to work on a narcissist, because they are against reality. So the best thing that you can do is just invest that time and energy into yourself, into healing yourself. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my message for this topic, and let me know in the live chat if you have any questions on what I've said, or anything that you'd like to say. I will read it out and respond to it. The George says, I have gaslighting PTSD voices. Yes, I don't want to get too much into PTSD or things like emotional flashbacks, inner critics, because these are things I'm not really qualified to talk about, and I haven't done much research on those topics other than for myself, of course, and my own healing. But as to deliver a message on those topics to other viewers, of course, I would prefer if you spoke to a licensed therapist for more information on that. Tabitha Baker asks, what can you do when you've been in a narc relationship for a significant amount of time and can't find a way to get out? If you're in a relationship with a narcissist and you can't find a way to get out, then that means that you must be dealing with a very jealous, possessive, and controlling narcissist. They can really be some of the most dangerous. So what I would advise for that is to book a session with me, or also I recommend BetterHelp. Those are two services that I recommend if you are seeking to leave a narcissistic relationship. Nala's just coming in here. But yeah, you definitely need some advice before you leave a relationship with a narcissist. Because of course they can be unpredictable. And you never know how they might react when you do try to leave. Nala needs some attention here, I think. She's rubbing up against the phone. She can hear me talking, but I don't know if she knows. Well, of course, she probably doesn't know what I'm doing. Do you know that you're live on YouTube, Nala? Are you aware of that? Do you know that you've got all of these fans on here who love and adore you? Do you know that you're the most famous cat on YouTube? Maybe not the most famous cat, but... I'm like the enabler for Nala. I have to prop up Nala's false self. Nala has turned me into a codependent. Actually, I don't always get this much attention from Nala as well. I think maybe this is just a show for the cameras. Nala wants to show everyone she's such a good pet. She's so loving and affectionate. I'm just joking, of course. I love my cat. I love Nala. Been with her now for 7 years. It's a great feeling as well to be able to be with her in different countries. She adjusted to the climate quite well. She doesn't have any issues with the heat. Even though, of course, she is from quite a cold country back in the UK. But I do wonder sometimes if she does miss the cold. I mean, we do have the AC here. But actually, from what I remember, during the winter in the UK, she would often sit under the heater. She doesn't have to do that here. So maybe it is more comfortable for her. I know Nala's stolen the show in this video. But I think it's good to show her sometimes because she's been with me now for 7 years. From even before I began this channel. But yeah, anyway, I think I will end this video here and maybe give Nala some treats. I hope you found this message helpful today. And if you did, please do give it a thumbs up down below. It really helps to support the channel. And if you would like to donate, you can go to my PayPal. It's paypal.me/Narc Survivor. I appreciate all donations, no matter how small. Hit subscribe and click all notifications to be notified when I go live in the future. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. If you'd like to book a one-on-one coaching session with me, just go to my website. It is narcsurvivor.co.uk. And you can see all of the wonderful beaches that I visited and so much more from my trip last year to Sri Lanka on my Instagram. Follow me on there. It is Narc Survivor YouTube. Thank you all for joining me on another Narc Survivor live video. Me and Nala. We will see you in another live video very soon.